welcome to Demon FM. Today I'm joined by a very talented comedian, Charlie Veron Martin, who will be performing at this year's Leicester Comedy Festival, which is the 30th year as well. So may I, as I say, start by saying welcome and how are you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm good. Yeah, it's a bit stressful, as lots of comedy shows and festivals coming up. It's exciting, but it is also the stressful stage.
It's one of them where it's manic, but it's good's coming out of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of time, a lot of weeks of on the day sort of saying like, oh, and when we go to this and when we do that, and now I'm like booking train tickets and actually it's less, it's happening. It's happening.
Finally, all that prep's coming into it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're going to be performing at this year's comedy festival. Well, many comedy festivals, but I want to ask, but how did you get started in comedy in general?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always loved comedy. I've always like my parents would always watch sketch shows and sitcoms. So I kind of always grew up like thinking comedy was the best and not really knowing that that isn't what everybody does. Um, and I'm from Edinburgh, so obviously the Edinburgh Fringe happens every year. And in my teens, I started going and watching a lot of live comedy. And towards the end of sort of high school, there was a lot of reruns of Whose Line Is It Anyway
Oh,
on. Yeah, so I did a lot of like instead of studying for exams,
okay.
watching that. Um, and Yeah, also because the Scottish school system's really weird because I already got into uni and then I was still sitting exams. It was very weird. So I watched a lot of improv and I was like, oh, I'm really interested in this. I don't think I could ever do it. I always was interested by like sketch and stand up. And when I went to uni, I was originally hoping to get to look for a sketch group, but there wasn't one, but there was an improv group. So I auditioned for that and got in, and then that was kind of my life as a student was doing being in this improv group, and we also wrote sketches and we did the fringe and everything together. And when I finished uni, I got onto a writing and producing comedy course in London and moved down to London and continued doing improv. And so that's kind of like my first love. And then after about 5 years doing that in London, I decided to actually start doing more solo stuff. And that's kind of what got me into what I'm doing now and at Leicester. I hope, does that answer your question? It's quite a rambly answer.
Yeah, so it's a bit like me, so it's fine. So obviously, I've so you get into that. I think I don't know about you, but creatively, do you find obviously you said about school or stuff? Do you find being more hands-on with stuff you learn more?
100%. I feel with comedy in particular, and I'm somebody who has studied it. Like you go to seminars and you can read all the books, but you have to, at the end of the day, get out on stage and perform in front of an audience and in front of an audience that aren't necessarily your friends and family. And that is the way you learn. I'm very lucky, especially from the improv point of view, that I got into this group when I was at uni, and improv was still quite new in the UK. There were a lot of Americans at my university, so they were quite ahead in what they were doing in improv. And we were doing a show every week, and I kind of learned through doing, and cut my teeth that way. Whereas now, I think a lot of people, and I do teach courses, and it's great. I love doing it, and I've taken classes and stuff since, but there comes a point where there, as I say, you have to get out on an actual stage and actually do it for real.
You have to put like I think most creative people just think so, no, people
Oh
just
no.
that you're quite confident and they don't see that you have to push yourself into them situations to gain,
Mm,
especially with, I think in comedy you're going on stage not knowing what the reaction is going to be.
yeah, yeah,
A bit of added pressure there, so you really have to push yourself out there.
yeah. And it's a very personal thing as well. I mean, I've done some acting as well, and even in a sketch, or if you're reading somebody else's words, I suppose, yeah, in straight acting. If you're doing Shakespeare, you know, you already know people have come because they like Macbeth or whatever, and you have something to fall back on. Whereas when it's something you've written, um, it's something you're improvising, it's you're very on display. It's quite a vulnerable position to put yourself at. There's no hiding behind anything else. You've got to really have faith in what you're doing and put it out there, and go for it.
Because you're putting yourself out there as a person, you know, your personality.
Mm,
I know people have acts, but technically you are still putting yourself out there as just your personalities.
mm.
So, if I'm right, so you're multi-skilled, is it right? I've done a bit of research. I don't know if it's right. Do you do accents as well?
Yeah. So I mean,
And
I'm a very multi hyphenated person. I did a podcast interview the other day and they introduced me with like 12 different things. I'm like, yeah, I'll do whatever anyone pays me for to an extent. But yeah, I'd say I usually introduce myself as a comedian, actor, writer, and then closely followed by puppeteer and character voice actor. um, so yeah, in my show, I do a lot of different things as well. I'm performing as lots of different characters, and I do have puppets and stuff as well.
I did see one of your shows for Christmas. You had a bit of a incident.
Ah,
The is it World Cup?
pardon?
You had a bit of an incident with one of your shows because of the World Cup or something.
Yeah, so this was just before Christmas. I'd been asked to come and do this sketch character night where I planned to do this character that I'd been working on that was going to be in my new show. And it just so happened it was before Christmas and it was, you know, some of the acts were doing character themed stuff. And I've done so many gigs at this venue before and with this particular like promoter as well. And I'd often used the projector and stuff before. And I turned up with my laptop, luckily early, um, to set up and stuff. And I was like, where is the projector? And they're like, oh, the bar took it because they wanted to watch the World Cup. And I was like, what? And they'd forgotten to realize that like I might have needed it.
Yeah.
But I went and talked to the bar and they were like, we're really sorry, but we did tell you guys, we did tell the venue. They'd taken the screen as well. And not just that, they had four screens. They had
Oh,
four TVs. And I was like, do you really need, like, I really need this projector. And like, sorry, we're already watching the football on it. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I needed more reasons to hate this World Cup. So yeah, I have a mini projector at home.
yeah.
At this point, I didn't realize they'd stolen the screen. So I kind of like, I was like, right, I'm just going to jump back on the tube. Luckily, I'm early. I'm going to run home. I'm going to get my projector and we'll just make it work. And then as I was on the way back, I was like, oh my God, do they have the screen as well? Is there any point in me even bringing my projector? And luckily, just before I left my flat again, I got a message from the promoter saying, yeah, no, there's no screen. There's nothing. So I just grabbed a bunch of stuff because my house is just full of props,
Yeah.
and costumes and crap. And I'd kind of already had an idea of doing a sort of one woman Christmas carol thing at some point because I just thought that would be quite fun. So I thought, well, I guess I'm doing that tonight. So I grabbed a bunch of stuff and on the 45-minute tube journey back to the gig, I like decided in my head, like wrote it in my head what I was going to do and then got up and did a 15-minute one woman Christmas carol. But it was one of the best gigs I've ever done in the end. So
Work out like that creative wise, like I
yeah.
this thing where I say to my mates, like, you have creative people who go for, they've taught in a specific way,
Mm.
don't know how to be creative when it comes to solutions.
Yes,
So yeah,
yes,
sometimes they have to be able to do that quick acting and like, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to do it instead. It sometimes
yeah,
works out better.
yeah. I think a lot of that also comes from um always, being forced, like not having the resources a lot of the time anyway. Um, I mean, it would be very nice to have a lot of money and um, I would love to be a nepotism baby. But I do think there is something to be said for people who have had to really scrounge for time and space and not always had tech at their disposal, not always had um the money to make fancy props and stuff. People who have to make do have to get creative and, you know, find solutions quicker. Um, it's annoying that you have to go through that to become creative sometimes, but it does in the end, I think, make you a more creative person.
Well, it also, if it goes really well, it just proves that you don't need all the props.
Yeah,
You're good enough
yeah,
at what you're doing, and anything else is like a bonus.
exactly. Yeah, it's a bonus, and usually those end up being more original uh pieces anyway. Um, when you have to when you can't go with the first idea and you have to dig a little deeper and find something else, and then also really sell it as well.
Yeah,
Um, if you're like, this is all I've got nothing with me, you're gonna have to go with it.
it shows like no matter like it can be singing, it can be acting, it can be stand.
Mm.
Sometimes if you can do it where it's just you, that shows a bigger talent, I find. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it also depends on what you find amusing as well. Like I love stand up. I love watching people who can just go up with a mic and tell a funny story. And I sometimes, as somebody who has a lot of props, every year I make a show, I'm always like, next year I'm just doing a stand up show. Next year I'm just gonna stand, and then I end up with like 2 suitcases worth of crap, like, because sometimes you can't help it, like having other stuff. But yeah, people who can I've seen people who can make me laugh just with like playing with toilet roll tubes and stuff like that. They don't need fancy lights and tech. Like little things like that can be sometimes the most joyful
it's
things to watch.
your creative mind and how you can make people see what you're seeing.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the puppets in this show in particular are made out of things that I had lying around the house. Like the main one being a picnic basket. Um, yeah, who's
Isn't that
a
good
very key
on
character.
that what your show's called for the comedy festival, isn't it? Is it?
It's called Picnic. And partly because of this character, it was for a long time called Sexy Fishy, because there was a lot of material about fish in the show and the environment and things like that. And then I had this character that I was doing called Mr. Basket Case with a picnic basket that I was doing a lot of on the circuit, and people were really enjoying. And for the first time, I've been working with the director as well, which has been really, really helpful. And she kind of sat me down and was like, this character doesn't fit into the show that you've been writing. And I'm like, no, no. And it's like, if it weren't for her, I'd have just shoehorned it in. She's like, no, if you want to keep this character, you're going to have to rewrite the show. And so that's kind of what we ended up doing. And even still though, like it's the picnic is a framework for the sketch show, really. It's not a show about picnics necessarily. But it did mean I got to keep that character in it. I You do have to kill your darlings, but I wasn't ready to kill Mr. Basket Case.
That's for a whole different show.
As yeah, it would be too sad.
So I've tried to do a bit of research. Have you been
Mhm.
to? So I live by a train track. To
I
the
just
most
heard a
famous
van go past my window as well, so I'm sorry about that.
one. Is this the first time you be performing at the Leicester Comedy Festival?
So this will be technically my second time.
Yeah.
So last year I came up for the first time as I'm part of this comedy collective called Weirdos, that are all alternative comedians. Some are stand-up, some are sort of more character acts like myself, some are clowns and things. And I mean, we're all weirdos. And the the promoters of this venue of Duffy's Bar and Firebug last year programmed it so that the weird all of us weirdos we came up and we did a show all together, which was called Envelopes, and it involved people when they bought their tickets getting sent things in the post beforehand with instructions of like things they had to do. So everybody there had like a role to play in the show. I played a giant tap dancing stamp. Um, Tap dancer is also one of my hyphenated things. So it was a really, really fun show, with lots of really great people in it. And then that weekend, everyone who was in that show also did a solo show. So I did a work in progress, which was sort of the start of this show. So there's a character in this show that was kind of that I started. That was a couple of characters in this show that were kind of born in that show, that work in progress, and have developed a lot in the past year. And and then this year, similarly, all the Weirdos people are programmed at this venue for the same weekend, but we're not doing a big group show this year. Um, but it's a really, really lovely lineup of really great alternative comedy and people doing work in progress shows of so if that's your bag, if very, very silly, surreal comedy is your thing, like camp out at Duffy's Bar for the weekend.
I'm
It'll
definitely
be a
coming
lot of fun.
back. Duffy's Bars are a music society place that we go to every.
Ah,
You know Duffy's Bar, too.
cool. Yeah, it's a really nice bar. It's really fun.
I know
And a
you
really
look
great venue.
outside and then you go in, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. It reminds me of a lot of my favorite bars when I was at uni um and in London as well. Like slightly grungy, but good. And it's a really great venue, like a great stage, and it's got a projector that I assume they don't randomly steal to watch the
I'll let
World
them
Cup
know when I'm
on.
next in there. I'll tell them.
Yeah, if I turn up and they're like, "Sorry, we're using this and three other TVs to watch the football," I might cry.
Hate for football for over for.
Oh my God, I really, really do.
So, what? Oh, so what? Who inspires you with the comedy, and do you in kind of use that into your kind of sets?
Um, oh, there's lots and lots of people sort of growing up that I watched that I really loved. Um, I'm a big fan of, I mean, French and Saunders were like the I
Yes.
think the first big influence on me. And it's weird because I remember watching them and watching all of like the French and Saunders parodies of like Titanic and stuff, and my sister could quote it all, and absolutely fabulous and all those things. And I never ever thought of the fact that they were women, and it wasn't until I was much older that I realized that like, oh, that was quite unusual at the time. Um, and still to an extent is. So I think they were like big first influences. Um, Julia Davis and the sort of that kind of surreal big train, spaced green wing kind of era. And like I'm and recently I was always kind of a bit scared of League of Gentlemen when they were out. But I like absolutely adore Inside Number Nine and
Yeah.
Psychoville And so and those things definitely have influenced this show. So this show does have a big twist in it. If you're an Inside Number Nine fan, you'll know there's always a big twist, and it's quite dark comedy as well. So this show has elements of that. Um, and likewise, like Julia Davis and all those kind of comedians, sort of that sort of surrealness, I think has sort of seeped in to the show too. Um, and yeah, and then there's lots of live comedians that I really love watching just now, and a lot of them are on that weekend. So yeah, there's lots going into it.
So after, just like in the future, where do you see yourself comedy wise? Do you see yourself doing anything on TV or kind of thing, or
Yeah, I mean, that's always kind of the dream, isn't it? Is to have either a sketch show on TV or a sitcom. Um, and I guess that dream kind of changes a lot. Is it used to be when I was younger, I used to be like, oh my God, I would love to star in my own sitcom or whatever. I think having written a few sitcom scripts, that gets I'm like, I would love for somebody else to write a sitcom and me just to be in it. That would be great. If I could just rock up and do the comedy acting. But yeah, like Motherland and stuff, like, oh my God, to be in a show like that or in an episode of Inside Number Nine would be an absolute dream. But I do see with like this show, a lot of my previous shows, I've always placed historical figures. Because
yeah,
my
I've
degree
seen
was in.
stuff. Oh, is it Jane Austen?
I did, yeah. So I had a Jane Austen character at one point. Um, I had a show also called the 24/7 Club. That was like my main debut show where I played historical figures that had the same birthday as me. My birthday's the 24th of July. Um, and a lot of those concepts are really great for a live show, but hard to turn into something scripted for like TV. Um, but what's been kind of fun about doing this show is it is more of a sketch show, pure sketch show, in that the characters are connected through me, but they're not historical figures or things like that. And there's also elements of myself throughout the show, so I do speak as myself rather than in a couple of most of my other shows. I only was speaking in character, so I'd love the idea of there are definitely characters in the show that I could see being part of a sketch show, and yeah, obviously it would be very nice to be paid to do more of it. And as I say, I'll pretty much do anything people pay me to do. um, but yeah, I think if
Finding,
I
finding your formula, isn't it? Basically,
pardon,
that finding your formula, so you can go to
yeah,
each bit and go, oh,
yeah,
I'll take that from that and that.
exactly. I mean, it's I've written and I've written things for like radio shows and TV shows, like random jokes and stuff as well. Like a lot of the time, and I know so many people who have almost had TV shows, sketch shows, and things like that, and then the commissioner changes, a new boss comes in, and they decide actually we don't want that. There's so much involved
Yeah,
that's not to do with you at all. Um, and it's taken me quite a long time to realize that, and that really all you can do is write stuff for yourself that you like, and hopefully one day it will come along at a time that somebody else needs the thing you've written. Because yeah, it's a weird industry.
but I think with technology now, you've got so many different ways you can do it, like podcasts,
Mm,
visual podcasts, YouTube. So it's so many ways you can go. Because I think as women, it's harder,
mm,
but you
mm.
have to. I think for myself, you put in a box more.
Yeah,
But then, like,
yeah.
if you've got an idea, unless it's their idea,
Mm,
so I think it's like you have to get to the stage where you go, how can I do it myself, or how can I
yeah,
teach myself to do it? So you
yeah,
can do it that way and find like YouTube, your own podcast, and do it that way.
yeah, yeah. Um, completely. And lots of people have. Like I wrote I've written some sketches for a podcast sketch show called Science Cast, which is produced and written by Charlie Dinkin and Zoe Tomlinson, and that's done through Hat Trick Productions. So that's like quite it's like obviously they've pitched it and stuff, but originally, I think in the old days before podcasts, when it was literally just Radio 4, and that if it didn't fit in the schedule of that, then it wasn't ever going to happen. It
Yeah,
has allowed for more ideas because that's like a horror comedy sketch show, which is I'm written by female and trans and non-binary writers. So that's good fun, which may have struggled to get onto a regular commissioning schedule before.
exactly. It's just it's slowly. I think it's slowly becoming more diverse, and more people are looking for something different in that way.
Mm-hmm.
As sad as it shouldn't be that way, but it's slowly.
Slowly,
Yeah.
hopefully slowly but surely. Yeah.
So, what is coming up for you? Obviously, you got the Leicester Comedy Festival. What else you got coming up this year?
So I've got I'm taking the show to Vault Festival next week. I'm doing that on Tuesday, and that's pretty much sold out now. And then Leicester, and then I'm doing Glasgow Comedy Festival on the 21st of March, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, Edinburgh Fringe. I'm still waiting to sort of confirm venues and things like that, but that is the plan at the moment.
That's not bad. That's not a bad start for the year, though. Even though it's
Yeah,
coming up March, it seems like it's really kicked off this year for most people that I've spoke to when it comes to comedy.
yeah. Oh yeah, I mean everything January is the busiest month for sure because that's when you're applying for Edinburgh, and you know scripts and competitions are happening, and your taxes. You got to do your taxes. So the start
Yeah.
of the month is always a big kick to be like, what am I doing with my life?
So, just before we finish,
Mhm.
what any shows that you're expecting to go and have a look at in particular for the Leicester Comedy Festival?
Um, yeah, so on straight after me is Michael Brunstrom, who is a very surreal, very funny comedian. There's also Firebug, Sarah Barron is on. So she's more of a stand-up. She's been on TV and everything, and I've seen her live a couple of times, and she's very, very funny. I hear Shaz on in the same venue. Ben Targier's doing some stand up. And I think Viggo Venn is on as well, who's a Norwegian clown. There's lots, anything that's going on in Firebug and Duffy's Bar that weekend. A lot of them are friends of mine, and I've seen their shows before, and or they're people who I've seen perform, and I really really like. So I really do recommend everyone on that lineup.
Yeah, I'll definitely. It's weird because I keep looking in things. I was, oh yeah, I want to go to that. I want to go.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got work. Oh, I really want to go to that. Really
And
hard.
a lot of them are pay what you want as well, which is
Yeah.
nice, especially for students.
Oh yeah. I'm quite lucky because obviously I'm part of it, so I can get to free and some bits. But
Ah,
it's quite nice to actually grab because obviously I'm surrounded by creative people at uni, so it's nice to grab my friends out of that kind of circle and like, oh, come and
mm,
see this, and yeah, so they can see stuff that I do behind the scenes or stuff like.
yeah.
So before we finish, where can people come and see you at the Leicester Comedy Festival? Time, date, and
So it is February the 26th. I said that backwards, like an American. That's weird. So that's a Sunday, and it's at 12:15 in the afternoon, not midnight. And yeah, you can rock up and pay after, or whatever you like, or you can buy tickets in advance for a fiver.
sweet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.